So that'll be the first hour of class. Second hour of class, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about APIs. So we want to look at how we can leverage code libraries that are available to us for free, code libraries made by third parties, and how we can easily integrate to add additional functionality quickly and easily to our site. Okay, so we're going to do a few different things. One of the things we're going to do is on our registration form, we're going to want one of these. Right? So we're going to use this code library integrated into our register page to make sure we're not getting spam on our registration form. We're also going to look at a couple of other simple APIs. We'll look at one from the Weather Network, and we'll also look at one from Facebook, and then you're going to have the world's shortest lab. If it takes anybody longer than 5 minutes to do the lab, I will be surprised. Okay. So the lab, probably I would suggest you just do it before you leave class. In fact, usually I actually manage to mark your lab before you even leave class. It takes you about 2 minutes to do. It takes me about 10 seconds to mark. Okay, so we're going to do that, and so that'll be this week. And then we have 2 more classes after today. Next week, I think next week, hopefully we'll have some time to look at adding search functionality in here so that we can do keyword search and filter this list for a keyword. It's something we can look at doing. The other thing, we'll spend a bit of time doing a review for your final exam. Okay, your final exam is in 3 weeks, but we have no class. Oh no, yeah, you guys do have a class, sorry. I thought this was Monday, it's Tuesday. Let me pull up my syllabus. Probably be a good idea if I knew what I was talking about. Might be a good idea. What's happening? Okay. Here we are. Sorry, no, it doesn't affect you. I was thinking of my Monday class. Normally our final exam, also help if I open the proper syllabus. It's okay, the caffeine will start kicking in soon. Okay. So normally Tuesday, August 11th would be your final exam. As I think I may have mentioned to you, I'm not going to be here that week, so your final exam is going to be on the 4th instead. Okay? There's no class. There will be no class on the 11th. Okay? So we've already done working with files. I kind of switched that around and moved that here. So we'll do the column sorting and API work this week. Next week, we'll maybe do search, and we'll also do some review, and we'll have lab 5 next week. Okay. The other thing that so then your exam will be on the 4th instead. The other thing that I'm going to do, and I'll figure out the due date, it will probably be sometime, maybe the end of next week. I'm going to give you a chance to do any labs you didn't do for a reduced mark, up to 2% of the 2.5 I'll give you if you didn't submit one of the labs and you want to do it. Okay, there's no reason not to do today's lab. Literally, if somebody went to the bathroom and came back, you could finish the lab in that amount of time. So nobody should be leaving class today until lab 4 is finished. 2.5 easy marks for you. Okay, and then your assignment's due next week. Okay, so for starters, let's get set up for today. So if you can make a lesson 11 folder and make a copy of your lesson 10 files and dump them in there, that would be great. If you do not have a working copy, you can always take my files off of Blackboard. Again, if you take my files from Blackboard, make sure you've put your database credentials in the db.php, and make sure you change the path to the 404 page in your htaccess file. And if your name is Devin, I've already done those things for you. And then you can upload a copy of the solution into the lesson 11 folder for today. So once it's working, you should have your list page. We should have our image gallery with our photos and our ability to view and change images on any record. All of that stuff we had working last week. And you can log in. Devin, did you create a login for yourself? Okay. So once you have it set up, you can go to the login page in the browser, just log in and load the athletes page, make sure it looks pretty much like this. So this is where we left off, and this is where we're going to be going with it. I already realized there's one small bug in this that I'll have to fix. Lucy, you're nodding. You already saw it. Did you see the bug? No. And you can also open up your code editor for today. We're really only going to be modifying 2 files in this application today. Most of the code changes we're going to do are going to be on our athletes page, and then eventually we're also going to change the footer. So I'm just going to open up my athletes.php file. So if you want to open up that page, now I'm not going to lie to you. Coding this functionality is fairly messy. Okay, so we're going to do this one step at a time because there's a fair number of things we have to do. The output's fairly simple, but the code to manage all of this is kind of lengthy. So here's our page as we left it last week. Whoops. I guess it wasn't like that. Sorry, I guess it was like this. And I think in the file you have, and as I typed it, we didn't put in any carriage returns. So this is line 23 in my file. It might be line 23 for you, might be slightly different. So yours probably looks just like this, right? This line, it's one echo statement with no breaks, I think. It's probably how it looks. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to take each heading, oops, take that out, just to start to make this a bit more readable. I'm going to take each TH and ending TH, going to just put it on a new line because we're going to have to add a bunch more stuff into each one. So before each table TH tag, I'm just going to put in a carriage return. So I've got the first name, last name, and email columns all just going on another line. It's not changing any functionality, it's just going to make coding a little easier for us. So you might just want to break those up into separate lines. So we'll build this out one step at a time, okay? And we'll kind of upload and check as we go, rather than me giving you like 50 lines of code to add and you not seeing what it's doing until we're done. So the first step one is we want to make these words links. Okay? So here's our static page. Right now the user can't click them, it's just HTML text being printed to the page. So the very first thing we do is we want anchor tags around those headings. So suddenly when the user, that'll put them in blue text, and it will give the link hand and also underline it with the bootstrap class. So step one is simple. Let's add a href equals, well, you tell me, where are we going? So I'll put an end anchor tag here. What page should these link to? Yeah, the same page. So all of the links are still going to go to athletes.php. So on my lines 24, 25, and 26, So I'm going to add this tag in green in front of each column heading, and then I'm going to add a closing link tag after each column heading. So don't forget you need to close each one. So this will now make those headings clickable. So save your changes and upload to the server and make sure those show up, and those headings now show up as links. So you don't need them in the edit and delete links, only in the first three columns, first name, last name, and email. So I've added those tags. I'll upload to the server and refresh my page. I'm not in the right place. So now these are links. They all take me to the exact same page. You can't load it this way. You have to copy the PHP script. It has to go on the server. That's why we need FileZilla. So you have to upload it to the server. It's going back into your W folder. And you're going to upload the athlete. So just drag it and then upload it. So these should turn blue and become linked.
Is there any use of like making these as a link?
Pardon? I couldn't hear you.
Is there any use of these first name, last name, and email making them links? Because you're going to make it adjustable. Sorted.
Yes, and as I showed to the people who are on time today, they already know why we're making these links. Now, so they're all linking to the same page. It's good. Our page will need to reload, but what we're going to need to do, so far our links look all the same. What should we do to them so when the page reloads, how are we going to know which one of those links the user clicked on?
Put a get variable.
Right. So we're going to need to append on to the end of each link a variable that indicates which link the user clicked on. So the first part of our link is the same. So we're going to append a variable on. I'll help you in a minute, Devin. It didn't upload. Okay. So I'm going to call this variable sort equals. So we'll append that on to each one. Sort equals. So this is the same. We've added this section in green onto each of the links. So what values should I append on to each of the individual links?
Column name?
That would probably be the easiest. Let's append the column name from the database that matches. So then we can use that value in our SQL command. So our first one is called first_name, all lowercase, last_name, and email. So each link is still going to go to the same page, but now each one has a different parameter value on the end of it. So when the page reloads, we now will know which link the user clicked on. So we know which column we want to do the sorting by. So save and upload that. And now when I load it, if I click on last name, notice my URL. It says sort equals last name, sort equals email, or sort equals first name. No, notice the data is not resorted yet. But at least now when we go to add the sorting, we can see which column we are going to want to sort by. Okay, so your link's showing up now? So now, let's talk about when our page loads, we now can check which column the user clicked on. So let's create a variable. So I'll put in a comment, column sorting. So I'll create a variable called $sort. So I think Yash, you already mentioned how we can know. So how do we get that value, that parameter?
$get underscore get.
Yeah, so if we use the get collection and sort, that'll tell us which column the user clicked on.
But don't you want to do an is set? What if?
We'll come back to that. We will. Okay. So now this tells us what column the user clicked on. So how can we sort, how can we modify our query to also include the column by for sorting? So we'll want to append on an order by and then our sort variable. Now we'll have to do one small change here on line 15. I've got a semicolon after the word athletes that finishes my SQL command. What are we going to need to do with that? Yeah, we're going to need to get rid of it, right? Because our SQL command's not done here anymore. We're going to append on to the SQL. So we can take our SQL command and we can append on order by, and now we use our sort variable. So now our query will say order by and have the selected column on the end. John, what's your question?
Why are we concatenating it right into the string?
Well, there's different ways that you could create an additional variable if you want to, and you could append it together.
My question is that aren't you going to bind this? Like,
No.
but what if someone enters an SQL string and that they press?
We can't bind it because it's not a parameter value. It's not being used in the where clause, so you can't bind it as a parameter.
Doesn't necessarily have to be in where clause, is it? You can just give a parameter and you can just bind it.
We could try binding it, I suppose. For now, I'm going to do it this way. Sorry, John, was that your question? Why are we not using it as a parameter?
Yeah.
We could try it. We could use it as a parameter. Normally, parameters are for putting it into a where clause.
In the API, it says it can only attach values, and it adds quotation marks around it.
Right, which we don't really want to do in this case.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm going to append it this way without the parameters.
Is there a safer way to do it?
We could try it with a parameter. Okay, if you want to.
But probably we'll just test it first.
I have to think about that for a minute. It's a fair question.
So if somebody enters a SQL string in the get, then
Okay.
What if we use the @slashes method?
Okay, where would you want to do? You know what? I'm going to keep it simple and get it working.
Okay.
I think, because the code is going to be, just to do the sorting, is going to be relatively complex. So we'll kind of do it one step at a time. So if I upload my page now, so if I save my page, I re-upload it. Did I miss something?
You forgot the semicolon inside the quotes.
Well, it's not critical. It will still run without it. Yes.
Just one second.
So now if I click on first name, it orders A to Z. That's good. If I click on last name, it orders A to Z by last name. If I click email, it orders by email. So that's good, although now if I click email again, notice there's no change. It's still ordering by email. It's still ordering in ascending order, right? We've only coded. There's one other problem. What's going to happen when I click list athletes and reload the page from here? I don't click one of the column headings. What do you expect will happen?
Thrown undefined index.
Yeah.
Right? We got an error now. Why did I get the error? Cindy, think you know?
Because you're looking for the sort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's looking for a get value, a parameter in the URL called sort, and when we click that link, we don't have one. So there's a few ways around this. You know, we're going to look for sort in the URL, but we don't always have a parameter in the URL, right? We have a sort parameter when the user clicks one of these, but when they click this one, we don't have any sort parameter. So there's a few different ways we could deal with this problem. Suggestions? What could we do? How could we prevent it from crashing when the user clicks the original list?
Do an is set,
Okay?
check for the value, and then if that's true, append it to the SQL.
Okay, so that would be one option. We can now check, before we append it, we can check whether sort is set or not empty. That would be one option. What would another option be? When the page loads for the first time, what value should we sort by? Could be first name. So we could also set a default value. We could again check if sort is empty, and if it's empty, we could either not append or we could just set a default value for it. So it would always sort by first name the first time. So we could do either of these. So I will set a default sort column if loading the page for the first time. So I'm going to say if empty. So if our sort variable is empty, we will set it equal to first name. So when the page loads for the first time, we're going to order by first name. And then from then on, it will order by whatever column the user clicks. So just this section in green, there's all our new code so far, aside from the additions to our TH tags. So I'm going to upload that change. So now if you click your list athletes link in the header, it should sort by default by first name without any errors. Then our column sorting should still work if you click any column heading. So I'm going to try this again, which last time crashed my page. So when I click list, there's no parameter here, so we default A to Z here. And now I can jump back and forth and sort any way that I want to. So doing that part was relatively easy, right? It wasn't a heck of a lot of code to add. Doing the up and down is more code, and then getting the arrows to show up like this is even a little bit more. So first we'll get the toggling up and down, And then at the end, we'll add some an additional bootstrap link, and we'll use a couple of other bootstrap classes that include the up or down, ascending or descending arrow. And we'll have to attach a class name onto each one of these links. And that class will either be blank, ascending, or descending. Okay. So let's think about this. I click here. It's sorting ascending now. What are we going to need to do so that when I click last name, if I click last name again, the order is going to reverse? Let's think about what things we'll have to do before we actually code it. And then when I sort descending, if I click it again, it's got to go back. How the heck are we going to do this?
You can take a variable and then check it, like if it's ascending, make it to descending.
Okay, we will definitely need a variable that keeps track. If we're sorting ascending when we run our query, then we have to set the variable for descending, so when we run the query again, it will go in the opposite direction.
You could probably make that a session variable.
We could use a session variable. That would be one possibility. How else, when I click this link, how else could we tell the page when it reloads whether to sort ascending or descending? Any other ideas?
Because the first time we click on one of those links is when it sets that sort last name.
Yep.
So doesn't that mean if we click on it again, if it's already set to the same word, that's how we would know?
That might be a possibility.
I would expand on his idea and use that as the determiner, but then set the link to space descending.
Okay, that's what we're going to do. So our links already have one parameter. We're going to add a second parameter onto the link. So if the data shows ascending now, we want to append a parameter on the end here that will set the direction to be what if it's ascending this time? Right. So if our data shows ascending, our links will all have a value of descending on the end. If our data is showing in descending order this time, our links will all have a parameter that says ascending on the end. So then just like we're reading the column name from the URL, we'll also be able to read the direction from the URL, ascending or descending, and we'll just toggle that, as Yash said, we'll toggle that variable back and forth each time. Okay? So notice the URL here, right? I've said sort last name, direction is ascending. Now when I click, it's sorting descending this time. So this time, if you look at my link in the status bar, if I click it again, I've toggled that value to ascending. So if the URL says descending, the links say ascending. If the URL says ascending, the links will say descending. So then we can go back and forth, passing that value and toggling it and passing it back to the page each time. And then we're also going to need to interpret that value here, right? When we add the column on, we not only want to add the name of the column, we also want to add the direction. And then toggle the direction and append the direction down on our links. So let's also create a variable here. I'll just call it dir. So again, we want to get this from the URL. So we'll use get once again. So read the direction out of the URL and store it in a variable. Now the first time around, we don't have a sort column. We also won't have a direction, right? Our list athletes doesn't have any value attached. So what default value should we give to our direction? Yeah, so we'll make it sort A to Z by default. So the first time the user clicks list athletes and the page loads, we're automatically defaulting it to go first name ascending. So when I click, this is what we want the first time, A to Z. So Alexis should be first, Venus should be last. So that's anytime the user clicks our link in the navigation. However, if they click one of these links, not only are we passing in the column name, we're also going to be passing in a direction. So we're going to want to grab that out of the URL. So we're saying those are our default values. So now how can we add the direction into our SQL query? Where should it go? There's a couple of different ways we could do it. What if we wanted to do it right in here? How could we include the direction here?
Just a space.
We can put in a space after the column name,
$.
and then we can add our direction variable. So both of these will change, right? The column name will change and the direction will change. So then we can run our query. So if it's ascending the first time, our query will run in ascending order. What do we need to then do after we run the query, not before? What should we do after our query runs, but before we create our header links? We need to now switch it. Right? So we need to toggle the direction variable before creating the header links, because the header links are going to use that variable. Now, there's a couple ways we could do this. We can either change the value of our direction variable, or it might actually be a little cleaner. The other thing we could do is use a separate variable that will be the opposite. I think I'm going to do that. It's a little less confusing. So if direction equals ascending,
Can we use a switch case?
we could, but we only have two options, so we don't really need to. If you could use a switch if you want. I'll create another variable called next direction. So if our current direction is ascending, our value for next direction will be, right, we're going to toggle it. So it becomes descending. Otherwise, our next direction should be what? So if we're showing the data in ascending order this time, next time it's going to be descending. Otherwise, next time will be ascending, because we're showing descending currently. We're almost there. So we can display the data in the order we want now. But what else are we going to have to do in here? We're going to have to add which variable on to those links? The direction or the next direction? It's got to be the next direction, right? The direction represents how the data is showing this time. When the user clicks the link, we want the opposite, right? So we need to add the next direction onto our links. If we're showing it ascending now, the links have to be set up for descending. And our variable is going to be called dir, right? That's the value we're looking for. So we'll append on dir equals, and we're going to put on our next direction. So we need this code that's in green after first name, last name, and email, but inside of the double quotes. So that section in green, I told you they were going to get messy. That should go on each one. So if you try your page out now, you should be able to click any link and it will go in ascending order, and if you click it again, it'll go in descending order. So here's what it looks like now. If I click on list, we get ascending A to Z by first name. If I click first name, we get Z to A. So I can jump back and forth now, up and down on any column. So this is the functionality. This is what we want. The confusing part is to remember. The confusing part is that we're not putting the current direction on our links. We have to put the next one on our links because the links are set up to load our page all over again. So we're anticipating the user is going to go in the opposite direction next time. So we can use this code for sorting any kind of grid. The only thing you really have to do is change, so if you were going to implement it in your assignment, it's not a requirement, but if you're going to, you just have to change the column names on the links to match the column in your table that you're showing. And you would change maybe what the default sorting column would be. Now, as John and Yash pointed out, it's not absolutely foolproof because somebody technically could change that value. So we could consider using bound parameters. There are some other ways of doing it. We could even consider, we did a quick base 64 encode and decode here on these links, so the user can't change the value. We could even encode the ascending or descending value if we wanted to, or encode the column name.
The binding doesn't work.
You tried it with the binding? I think the binding will only work in a where clause. That was my understanding, and then I hadn't really thought of doing it the way you suggested it, but thank you for trying it. Any questions about what we've done so far? Anybody having a problem? Question? A good way to practice this would be take, for example, your first lab where we built out, it was just a one page with a table of hockey teams. You could take it and make those column headings sortable, right? Or we did it both in lab 1 and lab 2, where you built a quick table. In lab 2, you had to add, edit, and delete links on the soccer teams. So you could make those clickable for practice. Now, the one other thing we should do is we should add these, right? So it also indicates to the user what column we're sorting by. Not every application will do this, but most of them will. If we're going to allow the user to sort, then having those arrows is helpful. So there are a couple of classes that come with Bootstrap. Now these classes are not in, they're not in the default Bootstrap CSS file. They're in another one, and I will post that link on Blackboard for you. So if you want to open up your header.php, and I'll put the link on Blackboard. Devin, I think you already have this link. So just bear with me for a second. Put this in here. So this is basically a font style sheet. Has a whole bunch of different fonts. So if you load the Lesson 11 folder, open the Lesson 11 folder on Blackboard, just grab that text in blue, copy it, and paste it below the style sheet links we already have in header.php. Because we're going to use a couple of classes from this style sheet that we don't currently have. So just copy that, and you can paste it into your header underneath the two Bootstrap CSS links we already have there. Devin, do you have that in your header? If you open header.php, up near the top. No, you don't have it. I will show you, I'll get you the link. I'll email this to you right now. Okay? You can check your email. Just give me a second.
Yeah.
So that code just goes inside of the head tag underneath your last CSS link. So what we're going to use for it, there are a couple of classes. There's a font awesome ascending class and a font awesome descending class. So what we want to do is attach one of those classes to whichever column name is the current one. And then we also have to figure out whether to attach the ascending, so we got to figure out which column is it, and is it ascending or descending? And then we want to make sure all the other columns just have a blank class with no arrow. So make sure you've got this link in your header file. So our links are okay, but after our end A tag, what we're going to do, we're going to write our own simple function. We're going to pass in the name of the column. We're going to pass in the direction and the current direction and figure out where the arrow goes and which arrow to show. So actually, we'll write that function first. So we're going to create our own function. We haven't done this before, but in PHP, just starts with the word function. And I'll call it set arrow. And our function will take 3 parameters. So the first function will be the column. Our second parameter will be, let me think for a second. How do I want to do it? The second parameter will be the sort column. So what column is the sorting done by? And the third parameter is the sort direction. Are we going up or down? So our function is going to return one of three values. It's either going to return the ascending class name, the descending class name, or blank. And we'll have to call this function from each of our three headings. So every heading is going to show either a blank, an up, or a down, but only one column will show the arrow. The other two will show blanks. So I'll create a variable called class, and I'll initialize it to default. So default value, no class. So empty class name by default. Our function will just return our class variable. So what we want to do is compare if the current column is the same as our sort column, then we need to show an arrow in that column. And then we'll have to evaluate which direction is it so we know whether we're showing this arrow or that arrow. So is the current column the same as the sort column? So we'll just write a little if statement for that. So if they're the same, we're going to want to show an arrow beside that name. So we'll show the up or down arrow accordingly. So if our sort direction is ascending, we'll use a class from that Font Awesome style sheet. Here's the class we're going to use. It's FAASC. FA short for Font Awesome. So if it's ascending, this will generate an up arrow, that class. Whoops, sorry, FA sort ascending. Otherwise, I think you can probably surmise the name of the class, which will be, thank you, Daniel, FA sort descending. So we have three possibilities. It will either return a blank if the column name does not match the column we're sorting on, it'll return a blank. And if the current column is the same as the column we're sorting, we'll either set the class to ascending or descending. So now we need to call this function 3 times. Inside of each of our th tags, we're going to have to call this function and pass in first name, then last name, then email. So there's the complete function. So in here before my th, we're going to put in an I and an end I tag. That's the HTML tag we're going to attach the class to. So, I'll put on the next line, be easier. And we'll say class equals, and this is where we need to call our function. So we're going to dynamically set the class of that I tag. Will it be blank, ascending, or descending?
What is iPad?
I think it's an italic. Hold on, sorry. In HTML5, it's not. It used to be in italics, although now we use EM. It just says a part of text in an alternate voice or mood. So it used to be italics, but it doesn't have to be. We're just going to show the image instead. There won't actually be text there. So I'm going to close my quote. And now we want to call our set arrow function. So I need to pass in 3 values. The first value is the name of the current column, which is first name. Go back up and look at our function. Also wants to know what column are we currently sorting by and what direction. Well, we already have variables for both of those. This is our sort column, and this is our current direction. So we want to pass both of those variables to our function. So we'll pass in our current column and our direction variable. And all of that is outside of the single quotes. So our function will return either FA sort ascending, FA sort descending, or an empty string. So we need that whole thing in green is new. So if you try this now, you should be able to upload, and at least if you click on first name, you should get the arrow up or down on your first name column. I realize it's about time for us to take a break, but we're just about done, so I would rather just finish this off. So I'm going to upload this so far. So go back to list. So there's first name. So now I've got my class. And if I click last name, we haven't added that function call onto last name or email, but notice now it goes away from first name because first name is no longer the sort column. So when our function gets called, when I click last name, we're checking, we're passing in first name, but the sort column's last name. So those are not equal, so our class is blank. So we want to add this same code onto our other two, but we need to change this to last name and then email. So I'm going to grab that whole section. Paste it in here in my last name and change that to last name. And then I'm going to do the same thing on my email column. So we're going to call set arrow each time, but we're going to pass in first name, last name, and email. This should be the complete solution. Maybe tab that over if that makes it a little more readable. So now we get our arrow on the right column every time, and it shows us the correct direction. Yes, it's very messy. I agree. So I haven't made this a requirement for any of your work, but this is a feature that you may well be asked to implement in a PHP application, so you should know how to do it. Does anybody have a question about anything we've done with this page? Up? Sure, how far? Tell me when to stop. It's just after 2. We will take a 10-minute break here. That's basically all we're going to do with this page. It's complete. So when we come back, we're going to start talking about APIs, and we're going to add some additional functionality in here by leveraging some popular APIs. And then I'll give you your lab. So we'll take 10 minutes here.